the moment I landed in Thailand, I felt like I'm in the right place. And then having that understanding of the Thai culture and also an interest in Eastern philosophies, in Buddhism and Vedic philosophies, there's just something there that makes me think, well, why? Why am I interested in that? Right? Because I want to learn, I want to understand, I want to deepen my knowledge about it. And yeah, I think that's why I was drawn to Thailand, like we all are. And I think we need to follow those curiosities as breadcrumbs, right? Because that's how our higher self speaks to us. That's what I believe, that we might not notice a lot of the serendipities and synchronicities, but if we do, that's great. But the most important one is your curiosity and your passion. What makes you interested? What sets your soul on fire, right? These are the signs. That's how our higher self, I believe, connects to us and leads us on the right path.
Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. I am here with such an interesting guest. I know I say that every week, but everybody's interesting, and I can't wait to introduce you to her. I just want to thank everyone for supporting this podcast. And if you want to participate anymore, you can engage on YouTube, you can subscribe, you can rate on Apple Podcasts, and you can subscribe to my newsletter at thespiritualforum.org. I sent a weekly newsletter out that highlights the most recent podcast, and it has some segments from prior podcasts. And I also have my reflections on the podcast that was just published, and sometimes that's fun for people. So those are all the ways that you can connect with me in the podcast. Let me introduce you now to Natalie Glebova. She's a best-selling author, self-love mentor, and a former Miss Universe. Having spent many years in the often judgmental and materialistic entertainment industry, she began to seek out the true meaning of beauty and success. Through her own transformational spiritual journey to attain self-love and deeper self-awareness, Natalie has started a coaching practice that focuses on energetic aspects of personal development to help her clients become winners in both life and love. She recently published her book, Temple of Love, which is a nonfiction parable that takes readers on a quest to rediscover their faith in unseen powers. Welcome, Natalie.
Reverend Carol, thank you so much for having me. I love your show and it's an honor. Thank you so much.
Well, it's an honor to have you too. I'm real excited. As we talked before I hit the record button, it's not often that we have a Miss Universe who's going to talk about her spiritual journey. And so this is going to be something new for everyone. Before we start, I wanted to do the rapid fire questions just so we can get to know you a little bit. Do you have a word or a phrase or a mantra that you live by or that is kind of a theme of your life?
I have many. In fact, my final answer in Miss Universe 2005 pageant was an answer with a quote to a question, what is the biggest challenge in your life? And that answer was that I believe that in challenging situations, we have a choice to look at the glass either half full or half empty. And even though there are many challenging moments in our lives, I strive to be that person who looks at the glass half full. And kind of throughout the years, I've adapted this mantra and this belief into a quote that says, "The way we choose to see the world creates the world we see." And I really love that because we truly are the creators of our reality. And so, depending on how we can adjust our attitude and our mental dialogue and maybe work through our subconscious patterning a little bit, will can totally change the way that our life comes at us because we create exactly what we perceive. Do you agree?
I completely agree. We're extremely powerful. And so many people feel helpless when they look out in the world and they're like, oh, it's such a mess. It's like, well, let's create something new. Let's create something different.
That's right. And it's all about reframing and learning that skill of reframing because I think largely that perception that we filter the reality through in our minds is largely subconscious. And sometimes we don't even have a choice because we're not aware of what's happening on a subconscious
Hmm.
level.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of it is a choice and it's an attitude adjustment and it's learning how to reframe every situation into something a bit more constructive, learning how to, instead of seeing negative things, learning to see opportunities and possibilities, right? And learning to give gratitude for
Absolutely.
small things. So it's all learnable, it's all teachable.
It is. It is. Thank you for that. Okay, the next question is do you have a place that brings you joy?
I do. It's my happy place that I have been going to for several years. I actually live in Thailand. Right now, I'm based in Phuket, Thailand. But my favorite place in Thailand, and I would say in the world, is a small island called Koh Phangan. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. No,
No,
it's
I have
in the
not.
Gulf of Thailand. So it's maybe you've heard of the island called Koh Samui, and it's also in the Gulf of Thailand, and it's a short boat ride away from there. And this island is just so magical for the people who live there. There's a big expat community who lives there. And although one negative thing about it is that the Thai culture has been sort of erased over the years by this expat community. However, the beauty of the landscape and just the serenity of nature and the really nice, conscious community of people that have been built over the years truly makes this place so magical for me. And every time I go there, I just feel so free, so much myself. Nobody judges you. And there's so many events in the spiritual community that you can attend. It's really, really lovely. Highly recommended place to go if you ever decide to visit
That
Thailand.
sounds fabulous. That sounds fabulous. I know this is an aside, but the TV show The White Lotus was in Thailand,
That's right.
and I think a lot of people got excited about Thailand that just in watching that show. It looked absolutely stunningly beautiful, but this island sounds absolutely perfect.
Mhm.
So I will look into that. Okay, this is kind of a heavy one. I'm wondering if you have a concept of God or the divine that you can share.
Ooh, wow. I've never really talked about this in any public forum before. I equate the idea of God because, we all use our mental constructs to decide what God is. But actually, if we move beyond that and say that God is not something that we can understand with our minds, I could say that I would equate God to the feeling of unconditional love.
Mhm.
And we all know what that love feels like because I'm pretty sure everyone can say that they've loved unconditionally something or someone. And it's that feeling when you tune into that feeling and where it originates from, it's somewhere deep inside of you. And I feel like it comes from the core of everyone's essence. We're all connected in that core essence to that unconditional love, to that source of unconditional love. And it pretty much permeates everything in existence. I think even for me, I equate the idea of the quantum space around us with that unconditional love. And so it's the totality of existence for me, the creative one mind that has spawned this entire universe and we are made in the image of. So to me, that's how I conceptualize God. But it's really more of a feeling, I think.
Well, I completely get it. I mean, even in the book of John, it says God is love. God is love. And so like we can bring God or the divine to any circumstance by just being love in that space.
Mm.
And as long as we're engaged and expressing ourselves as love, we are bringing heaven to earth. And these are all biblical concepts, or terms. But I completely agree that God is love. Love is God. And I marry couples, and sometimes they're not religious and they don't want to have the word God in the service, the ceremony. I'm like, I'm fine with that. I said, I don't have to say God, but presumably you're getting married because you love each other. And presumably because love is there, You can't keep God out.
That's right. It's synonymous.
Right? It's synonymous, so I don't have to say the word,
That's right.
it's what is happening in this ceremony. That is
That's
God.
beautiful.
So, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. I went a little deep. I wasn't sure if you wanted to go there with me, but I'm real excited you
Oh,
did.
I'm totally up for it. So throw me more
Yeah.
questions. I'm used to it, rapid fire and being on stage. But of course, we never get
Yeah.
to talk about these concepts in the entertainment industry where I come from. And so this is kind of new to me. And I'm just still such a novice on the spiritual journey. And I would love to share with you a little bit more about that. But I'm so fascinated by everything related to spirituality. So thank you for having the space for me
Yeah.
to be able to discuss things.
Yeah, I'm glad to. That's what this podcast is about, is kinda create that space to talk about these things. It's not out there in the world so much, so this is a space for that. Before before we get into your story, which I'm really interested in, in the bio that I introduced you, with, it said that you began to seek out the true meaning of beauty and success. Did you find it?
Any day now.
So you're still
Of
seeking.
course, I
Okay.
think that it's a
Yeah.
lifelong quest and it's something that we're actually all here to discover, right? Or actually, not even discover, to remember. I think we all knew it as souls coming before coming on this earthly plane. And we probably have forgotten a lot of this wisdom and a lot of this truth. And it's through this human experience, through trials and contrasts and duality, that we get to experience life and we get to understand what truly matters, right? And I think through the entertainment industry, I got to see, I rose to the heights of this industry where, being crowned the most beautiful woman in the world, in the universe, and then having experienced that which is so far away from the truth, from the actual spiritual truth of beauty and success. And so I got to learn it from the opposite, right? So I'm coming
Yes.
from that perspective. And that's why it's so lovely to see that you have guests coming from all different walks of life, right? And everybody brings their own unique perspective, and it's all pointing to the same truth at the end of the day. But we're all coming from different perspectives, all telling our story in a different way, in hopes that it resonates with somebody. And I'm sure some of your listeners who are young women who value physical beauty so much, but at the end of the day, we will learn one way or another what true beauty really means. And so I'm
Yeah.
starting to see it. I'm starting to obviously understand what it really means. But I think the journey is far from over.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think it's really good to acknowledge that we're on the journey. We're never finished. We've never found anything. We're still seeking. We're still digging. We're still going in and finding out more about ourselves and the world. And we live in a culture that really, really values physical beauty and success. And as we age, I think, and some of us are endowed in different ways and have different, gifts and all of that. And I think the media, our culture just makes it very difficult for people, especially women, to feel good about themselves if there's this ideal that's right up there, and I can't reach that. And to find your own beauty, to find your gift, exactly what you're here on this planet to give, and how you are here uniquely to express who you are. And that itself is beautiful.
That's right. That's right. And this is my hope, is that through my coaching, through my books, through the women that I'm able to interact with and reach, through my platforms, I'm hoping that they will be able to find that inner beauty within, because it's okay to focus on the outer beauty. As women, we love beautiful things, right? We're drawn to aesthetics. We're drawn to shiny, sparkly things as well. That's normal. But if we attach too much value and meaning to them and forget that the true beauty really comes from the light that we shine from within, that's when we get disillusioned. That's when we get farther and farther from the truth. And we might suffer the consequences of that later on as we age, because at the end of the day, we are all heading in the same direction. And external beauty will fade, but
Yes.
the light that you shine from within can never fade.
Yeah, and that's why sometimes you can't tell the age of some people. You
True.
know, they're just exuding this light, and it doesn't even matter if they've got wrinkles all over their face and body. It's like, wow, they're the light,
That's true.
and
Like
I think
yourself.
that's what we want to try to cultivate. Thank you, thank you. Let's tell your story now,
Mm.
because you're a Russian immigrant to Canada, and so tell us kind of your background and how you got into the pageant stuff, and then how you got on the spiritual path, because
Okay.
that's kind of not the normal segue. But I am kind of curious too about your Russian background.
Hmm. Well, we left just after the fall of the Soviet Union, myself and my parents. I was only 13 years old, right on the precipice of puberty, right in that very vulnerable stage of transition to young womanhood. And coming to Canada without speaking any English, even at 13 years old, was a big challenge. And at the same time, Russia was a very misunderstood place at that time. It just was right after the Cold War and, communism, and everyone just, that's all they really knew about Russia. So people didn't really respond well when I said I'm from Russia. And I got a lot of comments, kind of like backhanded comments and a little bit of bullying. And I really withdrew and I became kind of a loner, very self conscious, very shy. I didn't really talk to too many people. And it took me years and years before I could finally come into myself. And it was actually this reframing of my self image that helped me to grow into the woman that I am today, gain self confidence, even have the confidence to go for a pageant like Miss Universe. And it all happened because actually I met somebody in high school, in my last year of high school, who instead of saying all the negative things about Russians, he said, "Oh, you're Russian? I love Russian women. I watch a lot of James Bond movies, and Russian women remind me of, the mysterious, intelligent, beautiful Bond girls." And so I thought, here I have a choice, right? I can either look at myself from the negative perspective or this empowered perspective. And so the choice was clear. I chose the Bond girl image and I ran with it. And it really helped me to reframe how I looked at myself. And it just totally changed how I showed up in the world. So that was a very, very transformative period of my life around 18 years old. That was my last year of high school. Yeah.
So interesting. Okay, so that's a very, very clear choice, and so I think that's so interesting that you can go back and actually remember that juncture in your life that you made a choice, and that you would be on a completely different reality timeline if you had made, the other choice,
That's right.
and so you stepped in your empowerment, and that's what probably got you into the pageant work.
Well, this is, yes, part of it. I actually never really knew anything about pageant world or modeling, although many people would come up to me and ask me if I'm a model. So again, that kind of subconsciously seeped into my belief system that, okay, well, if people are asking me because I was tall, I had a certain look, and then I tried to go into the modeling industry, but to be honest, I was not successful in the modeling industry because modeling industry is quite tough in a sense that you needed to have a very certain look, the angular face. The multiple times I was told that I need to lose weight, even though I was already quite thin, and so it is. And so I never really got my foot in the door through the modeling world. And once I saw a pageant on TV for the first time, the Miss Universe pageant, the first one that I watched was a woman from Russia who had won that year. And that kind of piqued my interest. I thought, oh, okay, well, here we go. Russian women are making waves and they're making headlines. And obviously, the Bond girls are trending right now. So I decided to go in for it. And that's how I actually got my foot in the door of the entertainment industry. I competed the first time for the Miss Universe Canada pageant, which is required to win the national pageant before you can go for the international. But the first time that I competed, I didn't win. So that's another big piece of my story is that if I had given up right then, I wouldn't have taken this incredibly diverse and scenic route into my current position. But I felt that I really wanted to compete and represent my country, Canada, at the international pageant. So I decided to submit my application again, and I competed for Miss Universe Canada the second time around the following year. And that's the year that I won. And I ended up coming to Thailand to compete for Miss Universe. And this is how my connection to Thailand happened. I won in Thailand, and I think I got this really beautiful bond between myself and Thai people. I think the reason why was because I was the only contestant in the show, in the final show, who did the traditional Y greeting. So every time I was on stage, I would bow, and it's called the Y, the greeting. And I think that's how the connection between me and Thai people happened. I ended up winning. I ended up coming back to Thailand several times throughout my years Miss Universe while living in New York City, and just falling in love with this country and the culture and everything. And it was meant to be. It just kind of everything clicked. So by the time I was ready to give up my title and pass it on, I got a job offer in Thailand to work for a company as a brand ambassador. And I said, why not? I'll try it out for a year. And now it's been almost 20 years and I'm still here.
Wow. It's always so interesting when people find a home away from home. You grew up your childhood in Russia, and then you made Canada your home, and then Thailand became your home.
Right.
And it sounds like it's almost kind of a spiritual thing, I think. There's something about like you've been there before, you really resonate with the culture, and you know that this is where you belong.
I feel like there is something there to be said about past lives and
Hmm.
maybe, yeah, some kind of karmic experience because the moment I landed in Thailand, I felt like I'm in the right place. And then having that understanding of the Thai culture and also an interest in Eastern philosophies, in Buddhism and Vedic philosophies, there's just something there that makes me think, but why? Why am I interested in that? Right? Because I want to learn, I want to understand, I want to deepen my knowledge about it. And yeah, I think that's why I was drawn to Thailand, like we all are. And I think we need to follow those curiosities as breadcrumbs, right? Because that's how our higher self speaks to us. That's what I believe, that we might not notice a lot of the serendipities and synchronicities, but if we do, that's great. But the most important one is your curiosity and your passion. What makes you interested? What sets your soul on fire? Right? These are the signs. That's how our higher self, I believe, connects to us and leads us on the right path.
Yeah, so pay attention to your curiosity.
Mm,
I think it's really interesting to think about, had you won that first year, you wouldn't have gotten to Thailand.
exactly. And probably I wouldn't
Yeah.
have won Miss Universe that year because there was something about the connection between me and Thai people that helped me.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you were definitely a favorite. I could tell from the videos I watched by the local people. They loved you. So they were kinda like welcoming you to Thailand or welcoming you
Absolutely.
back home.
I
Yeah.
feel like I'm the adopted daughter of Thailand. Thai people gave
Yeah.
me a Thai nickname, which is Pha, which means sky or blue color for my eyes. And it's
Okay.
just it's just been so lovely to get to know the culture and immerse myself in this country. It really is beautiful. Highly recommend that you come here. And
Yeah,
people are
it
very
does look really
gentle,
beautiful.
very sweet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's pivot then to your spiritual journey because I'm guessing that your book mirrors your own personal experiences. Is that right? That did you go to Peru and all of that?
Well, funny enough is that I actually did a similar journey after I wrote the book, and I went to Peru and I went to Costa Rica and Guatemala and all of those places. But prior to writing the book, I had already gone to a few other places that I wrote about. But I kind of wanted it to be an amalgamation of everything that happened to me, but also imagination of what my life would have been like had I not won Miss Universe. So it's kind of it's a fictional story based largely on my own personal experiences, but it didn't happen exactly like that. Because when I graduated university in Toronto, I graduated with a degree in IT management. So I was all poised to be a project manager in an IT company or something like that. That's what my parents would have wanted. But life took me on a very unexpected detour, but it always left me wondering what would my life would have been like had I not gone the Miss Universe path, the pageant path, and maybe continued getting my MBA as I was planning or getting into the business world, the corporate world. And so it kind of led me to write the story from that perspective because I think writing from the Miss Universe perspective, it wouldn't be very relatable, maybe, because there's only, what, 70 something of us who won Miss Universe, but definitely somebody who's in the corporate world but has a curiosity about all these things spiritual, it's a lot more relatable. It's a lot more likely that my readers would find this to be, oh, that could be about me. I could be living in this big North American city. I could be working, in an office or doing something similar, and then wondering what more is there to the world than this. What more is there to life? So that's what kind of led
Interesting. So
me.
it's yeah, so it's kind of a parallel universe kind of, uh,
An
story
alternate
that
reality, yeah.
you've yeah, an alternate reality that you have imagined, but also grounded in some of your own experiences
Right.
so that you could kind of write from your own heart. And so it's imagined, but
Mhm.
also true.
That's right. Well, all the experiences, at least how it felt or what I've experienced in certain relationships, that's all true. It just happened to be that I changed the names of the people and I created characters that were the amalgamation as well of different people. And right, but the journey and the shamanic experiences that I have experienced in the book were actually my experiences as well. Perhaps not in Peru, but in other places. So,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
All right, okay. So let's talk about that then. You win Miss Universe, you find home in Thailand, but something kind of gets you on the spiritual path. What's that?
I would say that my very first even glimpse into this spiritual world happened, funny enough, while I was Miss Universe. And I met a fellow Canadian who is very well known. His name is Jim Carrey.
Oh,
And
yes.
he,
Yeah.
yeah, I met him in New York and he started talking to me about The Power of Now. Of course, the famous book by Tolle. And he gave me the book. He sent it to my hotel and would sign from Jim Carrey. I still have it on my shelf somewhere. And I remember in my early 20s, I was 23 when I won. I was very young. I remember reading that book and thinking, I get it, but I don't really get it. I just kind of like
Yeah.
read halfway through and I was like, yeah, I don't know. Not ready yet.
Well, 20s is like a different decade, really.
Absolutely.
It's not you're not always on that path.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I actually put that book aside for many, many years, moved to Thailand. I think I might have even given birth to my daughter already by the time I picked it up for the second time. And when I picked it up for the second time, I was well into my 30s and I just loved it. It just clicked. I completely immersed myself in it. I understood it, even though it was still a conceptual understanding. And I still felt like I needed to find confirmation for everything that I was reading because Eckhart Tolle was talking about obviously observing the ego, observing the mind, and separating yourself and becoming aware of yourself as the observer of your thoughts, right? And then also understanding that all of your emotions are kind of like an entity that are called the pain body within you. And so a lot of it clicked and I understood it and I was so curious about it, but I still felt like I needed more confirmation about it. And so I started diving deeper into spirituality, taking many different meditation retreats, some shamanic plant ceremonies. And I started to get that confirmation. I started to see, oh, so there is more to the physical world than what we just see and experience with our senses. And so the more I dove deeper and more I read about it and the more I experienced it in meditation myself, that's just how my spiritual journey started growing. And I started to walk that path. And even though I began a coaching practice that largely serviced the pageant industry still, a lot of the girls who I coached were coming to me because they wanted to win the title. They wanted to win the crown. That was my program called Win the Crown. And I started to incorporate a lot of these messages that I learned from my favorite spiritual teachers, a lot that I learned from my meditation practice, from breath work. And I started incorporating it into pageant training. Have you ever thought that you could cross over the pageant world with spirituality in this way?
It makes sense, though. It makes a
Makes
lot of
total
sense.
sense.
Anything that you're trying to, yeah, to do,
Of course.
if it's infused in the spiritual
Of course.
practices, you're going to do well.
Of
Yeah.
course. And nobody else that I noticed, I think still to this day, I don't think anybody in the pageant coaching world does this because mostly they focus on the external, right? The walk,
Sure.
how to speak, maybe some mindset about developing confidence. But nobody has really taken that perspective of the energetical side, right? The energetic well being, the energetic part of us, because we're physical beings, we're mental beings, and we're energetical beings. So why are we missing out that big component of who we are? And so I teach, and I've been teaching a lot of my students how to get grounded, how to get centered with breath work, how to come back to the present moment through thought awareness, through body and breath awareness. Because when we are in the present moment, we are most authentic and we have all access to incredible wisdom, incredible energy, and we're connected to the divine in the present moment. So if you're competing from that present moment, can you imagine how much better your presentation is going to be? Of course.
Hmm. Yes,
So
yeah.
that's
I
what I
think
have been
that's really
doing.
interesting. Yeah, that's great. I want to get back to the Jim Carrey story because there's a couple things that I pulled from that. Um, he what I find is really important is he handed you that book when you're 23 and you were kind of too young to get it, as most people in their 20s. But what I really want my listeners to take away is it's important to plant seeds, even if you don't know that they may take root in that moment. They may take root or start to grow 10 years from now. They may be one of many, many seeds that helps a person get on their spiritual path. And so what I got from that is I think it's important to plant seeds with people no matter what, and don't have
Hmm.
expectation that, that Natalie's going to pick up this book and she's going to have a transformed life and everything's going to be different tomorrow. You're on your own journey. I'm on my own journey. And there are times where something that somebody said 10 years ago starts to take root. And I start to go, hey, so I think it's really important that we look at ourselves as vessels of the divine, planting seeds
Mm,
and letting them just grow how they're going to grow, and then back off and let that person just do what they want to with it.
that's right. What a beautiful analogy. I agree. And seeds can be planted as early as early childhood. I am already starting to do that with my daughter, little bits and pieces, and reading her little stories. I have a wonderful therapist who actually creates stories for her. They're magical stories of her and her companions and her favorite toys, and they go on magical adventures with the messages of gratitude, resilience, hard work. Um, speaking kindly. So these are all seeds that are currently being planted in her. And I think it's our job as parents, right, to plant those seeds. And again, without expectations, but having faith that these seeds will be there and they have the potential to grow.
Yes, yeah. I do think faith is important. Faith is just letting go, letting God, letting go, letting the divine. Like, I've done my work, now I don't have to work anymore. And when I was leading a church, I would often have the metaphor of the seed where you plant the seed, okay, you plant it in the dirt, and you've gotta let it you've gotta walk away then, because it will never grow if you keep going back and digging it up and looking to see, "Is it growing? Is it growing?" And that's what we do sometimes when we plant seeds. We wanna see, "How's it doing? How's it going? How is it, how is it taking root?" No, that's where faith comes in. That's where you know, faith is knowing that all of the nutrients are in the soil and the sun, and all of the divine work is going to happen to bring that seed to fruition into a plant or a tree. And I've already done my work. It's just planting.
Right.
God does the rest.
Right. It's the power of surrender. It's one of the hardest things to do, I find. And
It
my
is.
goodness, it is hard sometimes, isn't it? To
Yeah,
surrender.
we think we control more than we do.
Uh,
The other thing that I got from your story so far is that I have so many people come on my podcast that have experienced some, like, they get on their spiritual journey because they've experienced some massive trauma, something that really, they hit bottom, or you know, some tragedy befell them, and it's not necessary. That's the thing I want to say is sometimes that's the way the world works, that we don't get on our spiritual journey until we've hit bottom, or until we've hit a wall, or we've had something happen to us that we just have to completely surrender to. And other times we just get on the journey because it's calling to us,
mhm,
because our curiosity is calling us in that direction.
mhm,
And that seems more like what your path might have been. And I just wanted to point that out, because I think it's important for people to know that you don't have to wait for tragedy to befall you
mm.
to get on the spiritual path.
Well, if I'm being completely honest, I have both, right? Because
Okay.
at the beginning, it might have been just kind of like following my curiosities and seeing where life takes me and following opportunities and synchronicities. But in the last 2 years, it really has been through tragedy, through heartbreak, and through really just things that I never expected would happen to me. The breakup of my family, becoming a single mom, and just really learning how to forgive, learning how to make peace with the other person. And it has been probably one of my deepest spiritual lessons yet so far. And I'm still in the midst of it, to be honest. And I think these challenging moments can really create almost like a paradigm shift and make us take quantum leaps forward in spiritual development if we choose to look at these tragedies as blessings, no matter how hard they are. And my recent life mantra has been, this is happening for me. This is not happening to me. This is happening for me. And so I have been repeating this mantra over and over again in moments where I just kept asking why. Why is this happening? Why am I going through all of these difficulties, with the divorce and court and custody hearings and everything else, that at some point you really just begin to play the victim. But that's coming from that disempowered angle, and that colors the world that we see in that disempowered reality. And so that mantra really helped me to kind of put things in a different perspective and understand that there's a massive opportunity for growth here. Because if I can learn to surrender, if I can learn to forgive, if I can learn to make peace with whatever is happening, and I stand to become a completely different person once this is all over. And when I look back, I can thank my former self, and I can thank my ex husband, and I can thank everybody who was involved, to say, thank you for being my teachers. Because if it wasn't for you,
Mhm.
if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yeah, none of us go through life unscathed. We all have stuff happen, and it's so easy to get stuck in the why. Why? Why me? Why this? Why that? And that's an okay place to be. It's just not an okay place to stay, you know? It's a response that's very natural, but if we stay in that, like you say, you're stuck in the muck of victimhood. You have no power whatsoever. And you were right. Everybody is here to help us grow. And, ultimately, I think you end up getting yourself to a place where we started, which is unconditional love,
Right.
which is no matter what this person did to me, no matter what the circumstances did to me, I stand strong and I still am love, and I'm gonna love everyone. And ultimately, that's where we want to be.
That's right. And I think it all starts within, doesn't it? Because if you
Mhm.
have that unconditional love for yourself, it's so much easier to give that unconditional love to other people. And I truly believe that everyone is capable of it, but we obviously have blockages. We have traumas that have shaped us and have prevented us from giving that love to ourselves. Because whatever might have happened in our childhood, whether it's abandonment, whether it's some kind of abuse, whether it's neglect, we tend to internalize that and not allow ourselves to love ourselves fully. And so, if we don't do that for ourselves, how can we possibly love anybody else? So, it all starts within. And I think that's what Temple of Love, my latest book, is trying to teach people is that if you are out there looking for love, which ultimately the protagonist in the story goes in search of this true love and as a pilgrimage towards a sacred temple in the jungles of Mexico. But what she finds is that on the journey there, she heals herself one chakra at a time. She heals her generational trauma, her past conditioning, the thought patterns and loops that she's been stuck in, that background noise that has been there the whole life since childhood. And when she finally gets to the temple of love, to this temple, it ultimately becomes clear that the temple of love is something that we need to build within ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of like The Alchemist
Yes, going
a
out to
bit.
search for treasure. Meanwhile, the treasure
Yes.
was within you all along.
Yeah, 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 we share a love for that book.
Mhm.
It's a great, great story. So, yeah, you say you are a self-love mentor. Have I think we all do, but I'm wondering if that has been really part of your journey struggling with self-love.
Mm. It has, and as I mentioned at the beginning of our chat, I definitely had a lack of self-love when I first moved to Canada. And I think it had largely to do with the media, also my parents, because they left and they were so traumatized by the communist regime that they've never even been back to Russia their entire lives since they left. And I think for them, they instilled at that young age this kind of distaste for Russia because that's why they left, because at that time it was just, economically, politically, it was such a mess. And I kind of internalized that into myself, thinking that if my place of origin is a total mess, then who am I? Right? So I identified myself with my place of birth. And so it took me years, as I mentioned before, I could reframe that self limiting belief and that negative self image. And throughout my years, even growing up, obviously being in the entertainment industry as well, like I mentioned, very unforgiving, very judgmental, hypercritical. It took a lot of courage and a lot of self awareness and self work to be able to rise above all of that criticism and all of that external noise that kept telling me I'm not skinny enough or I'm not pretty enough. And even after I won Miss Universe, going onto, the comment section of the internet and reading the comments, of course, you're going to be horrified what you read there. And nobody escapes that. Everybody gets that criticism, no matter how beautiful, no matter where you come from. And so it took quite a lot of, I would say, self reflection and inner work in order to understand that I am so much more than my place of origin, so much more than the look that I have, my beauty, my age, anything that I can think of myself. I'm so much more than that. And I think once you realize, this is what I teach my clients, once you realize that who you are is not those surface level things, and who you are is so whole, so complete on the essence. You are incredibly valuable and worthy of love. And you are the expression and of divinity, basically. We are all the expression of the divine. Once you can understand yourself on that core essence of who you are, there's nothing that can sway that anymore. So even if you get older,
Hmm.
even if somebody says something negative about you, even if you lose your job and or you lose your money or whatever it is that you attach your identity to, you are going to have that confidence and you're going to have that self-love. I actually think I equate self-love to confidence, or confidence to self-love, right? Because you can't be
Okay.
confident and not have
Right.
self-love.
Hmm. Hmm. I hadn't really thought through the comments section. It's so interesting that you mentioned that because I think most people say, "Oh my gosh, you're just such a beautiful person, and you're there's nothing wrong. You're so lucky." But you put yourself in this tier of society where people will start to kind of pick at all of these little bitty things, and you're in the spotlight, so you're going to get all of that. It's like Karen Carpenter, her story where she just got so much negative feedback about her weight, I think, and then she ended up going anorexic and she
Mm,
ended up dying.
mm,
But she was really responding to all of the comments and all of the criticism. She had an unbelievable voice, unbelievable talent. She was a great drummer, a great singer, but she took in all those comments and that made that into who she thought she was. And so I hadn't really thought through the winner of the biggest beauty pageant in the world having to sort through those comments and see that criticism.
absolutely. You would think, right? You would
Yeah,
think.
right, you would think. You would think, but we're all projecting stuff, we're all
Mm,
projecting our own imperfections onto others, and
mhm,
so we're all gonna be, biting at each other's ankles in those comments, and social media is brutal. I mean, I get in conversations with people all the time, and I try my best to stay loving and universal love and accepting, and let's
mhm,
just exchange ideas, but there's a lot that can come at you,
mm.
and, we do have to have that strength and self-love to just, let it go, you
Right.
know?
Well, this is why I teach the three cornerstones of self love, which happen to be self awareness, self care, and self development. And it all starts with that self awareness. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you're here to do in this world and what your talents are, your gifts, experiences that shaped you, the qualities that you're most proud of, your priorities and your values, but also on the beyond that surface level, on the core essence, like I mentioned, if you don't know yourself, you're not going to have that self love because you're always going to be attaching yourself to what other people think or being dictated by what other people think you should be doing or what success and what beauty is. So self awareness is really the first step. And then we go into self care. And obviously, when you take care of your body, when you take care of your mind on an energetical level as well, you just, that wellness, right? When you're well, you love yourself much more. And obviously taking care of yourself physically, nutrition, fitness, and all of that, that's just one part. Because a lot of people equate self-care with kind of just like, oh, relaxing or maybe going to the gym and something like that, but it's so
Yeah,
much
the
more.
spa.
Right, it's so much more.
Yeah.
It's about setting boundaries, learning how to say no, learning how to observe your patterns and observe why you do the things you do, the triggers, your attachment style, and all of these things. Like, this is all part of that psychological, mental self care, but also being alone and journaling and being in nature and having some kind of meditation, a prayer practice. That is spiritual self care. That's also a big part of it. So it all comes together in that one cornerstone of self love, as self care. And then self development as well is another cornerstone, which means that the more work you put into yourself, not to seek perfection, but to seek constant improvement and continuous growth, so that you can look back at yourself and say, wow, I've come a long way. And look at how much. wiser I've become, and how much more I'm able to deal with challenges, and observing your spiritual growth, right, and putting an effort into your skills and into your art and into the things that you want to bring value to the world. So this is all part of that self love formula that I talk about in Temple of Love, actually, and it's symbolized by the Temple of Love, which is the pyramid shape. And it's an interesting connection because I love talking about symbols. And so symbolically, I chose the pyramid to have people put into their subconscious mind that within them you can always build that pyramid, that temple of love, and carry it within you all the time.
I think that's wonderful, and I love that your book is kind of fiction because I think we learn so much with an adventure and a kind of an introspective journey. So, okay, so it's self-awareness, self-care. What was the third one?
Self-development.
Self-development, self-development. Yeah, it was interesting before I got on, I change all the time. I'm so different than what I was. I mean, so different, and I think most people change, but I changed very dramatically, and I told my husband this morning, we've been married for almost 44 years. I said, "Man, I'm changing again." He says, "I'm like, I'm changing and I feel a big change coming on, you know, I don't know if you're gonna be able to ride out this one."
Oh,
He's like, "Oh, I'm used to it."
oh, another metamorphosis coming your way.
Another meta I can feel it. I can feel it. It's like it's problematic when it's like I can't do things that we used to enjoy doing together. I can't do that anymore. So anyway, it's interesting. It's an interesting ride, but I think that we're always developing, and our journey is like your story that you told. It is an adventure, and we are called to grow
Mhm.
and to change and to become closer to our higher self that is leading us all
Mhm.
along. So,
That's right.
and I think that's what your whole story is about. Let me see. We got about 10 more minutes. I'm kind of interested in you had personal experiences with plant medicine?
I have. I have. It's as I said, it kind of started because I was looking for confirmation of what I was reading in these spiritual texts. And later on, after I started doing research about these shamanic plant medicine experiences, such as ayahuasca, there's one in the Eastern philosophies, I think it was written about, called Soma, and so many other ones that have been used for thousands of years in indigenous cultures along from everywhere in the world, actually, right? From the Amazon to Egypt and even here in Asia. So I started really looking into it, and it really piqued my interest because as a child, I always kind of seeked to find these altered states of consciousness just by going into these meditative states. And when I was a child, I didn't know what I was doing, but I would somehow, using breath work and using certain just meditations, I would find myself almost like in these altered states of consciousness where I would see beautiful visions and colors and patterns. And it always just fascinated me. And so when I found out from a friend of mine that she had done ayahuasca, I immediately started looking into this. And I read all the books that I could, and I watched all the YouTube reviews about it. And I think it probably was a bad idea to learn too much about it because then I went in with a lot of expectations. And the
Yeah, yeah.
recommendation is to go in with zero expectations and to really just open yourself up to the magic and intelligence of these plants, because in ancient cultures they truly believe that plants are sentient beings and they have incredible intelligence and their own frequency, that once we tune into that frequency we can be gifted with healing and downloads and insights. And this is why whenever I did go for any plant medicine experiences, I would say, as an intention to the plant, I would say, show me what I need to see, teach me what I need to learn, and heal what needs to be healed. So it is very, very interesting, and it's not for everybody. I think that everyone has their own medicine. For some people, it could be plants, and there's different kinds of plants, some of which I do not resonate with. And for other people, it could definitely be meditation, you know, prayer. It could be in so many ways connection to the divine, however way that they find it to be, right? Through yoga, through breath work, through dance, through art, through religion. There's just so many paths. And I feel like they all lead to the same truth. And this is what I really, really love about exploring different paths. And plant medicines is just
Yeah.
one of the paths.
Yeah. My daughter and I, my oldest daughter and I went to Peru, and we went on this journey, and we did San Pedro.
Mm.
And well, I had zero expectations, but what I learned, zero. I mean, I wish I'd done a little homework. The only homework I had was the day before, one of our tour guide's friends said, "Hey, if they offer you a second cup, drink that too." I'm like, "Okay." So anyway, they offered us a second cup. Without going too far into the story, what I did learn is your intention with the plant completely matters
Mm.
about what experience you're going to have. My daughter had a completely different experience than I had after drinking this San Pedro, and I couldn't figure out why. It was the same stuff, it came out of the same pitcher. And it wasn't until later that we went in and we talked to it was an Inca priest, and we didn't speak our intention. We just had to have an intention. And I asked her what her intention was, and I can't remember what it was, but she had a real kind of happy, fun experience. And I went in with the intention. I was in Peru, and I'm like, I want to know Pachamama. I want to know you. I want to know who you are.
Mm.
And I'll make this short because this is your podcast, but and what happened was she pulled me into the earth. I was heavy into the earth, and I felt like there were plants growing through my body,
Wow.
and I could barely get up. It was so interesting. Now, I'm not sure what that's done for my spiritual path or spiritual awakening, but I did learn that that intention I set
Mm.
completely determined the experience that I had.
Mhm.
And I just thought that was fascinating.
Mm. Wow, that's a really deep experience. And I'm so glad that you got to have that because it actually is similar to my first experience with ayahuasca, where I was sitting on the ground and I felt like I was melting and going into the earth. And then I felt like I was Mother Earth herself.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what happened.
Right.
Yes, for me.
And
Yes, I
that's a
became her.
deep one.
It was so the only problem with us is we hiked about 3 miles into where we did this experience, and then we had to get back.
Oh, okay.
And
That's
I would
interesting.
walk and then I'd have to stop because it's like I'm it's wearing off, but I
Right.
still feel like I'm heavy to go into the earth.
Right.
It was fascinating,
It
fascinating.
really is. And
So,
that's why I'm the kind of person that always gets fascinated with these things. And some people actually get scared of these things, and that's okay. That
yeah,
as a child, I was always very curious and brave, and I just dove into the unknown and I did things like that. But that is to say that if you're not being called to do it, then maybe it's not your thing, right?
right, right. There's no pressure. Everybody's on their own
Yes.
path. So,
Absolutely. Thank you for
um,
sharing that. That's such a wonderful experience that you had. And even though you might not necessarily know, like, what did I experience from it? Because actually, sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5 sessions before you get anywhere, before you get really any kind of massive downloads or massive changes. But in general, I feel like plant medicines can really give you extra awareness of what truly matters to you. So reprioritize your entire world
yeah.
and also highlight to you your patterns, the things that you have been repeating and living in loops. sometimes it can really highlight, which can save years of therapy. Not to say that it's
Yeah,
a
that's true.
substitute for therapy, but it can be one of those breakthrough aha moments in combination with good therapy.
Yeah, yeah, I get that.
Mm,
I know for me, my takeaway is Pachamama, Mother Earth, is very powerful, very strong, very strong. So when we think about, oh, we got to save the earth, she's like, I'm fine.
yeah.
I have enormous power.
Mm, that's right.
And I can shake you off if I need to.
One of my favorite quotes that I share with my students is, because I train them how to answer final questions, and sometimes there's environmental questions. So I have list of quotes for the environment, and one of my favorites is, "The earth does not need to be saved; it needs to be loved, and that's how we save it."
Yes, yes, yes. Back to unconditional
That's
love,
it.
back to the definition of God, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, well, Natalie, this has been so much fun.
it
I
has.
I think this has been so much fun, and I wanna make sure that you have the last word, if you have something else that you want to share that we didn't cover.
Well, I would love for everyone to ask themselves how can they take their own pilgrimage to their heart, because this is a really probably one of the most important quests that we'll ever undertake in our lives, is to pilgrim to within, to the heart. And Temple of Love, actually the subtitle of the book is Pilgrimage to the Heart, and the journey takes the protagonist from South America, going up through Central America towards North America in the jungles of Mexico, passing through sort of like the heart of the Americas, right? So again, it's symbolic in that sense. And I just want to invite people to find their own way that they can begin this pilgrimage. And it can start in so many different ways, whether it's following a particular spiritual teacher, deepening your understanding of any religion, maybe going the plant medicine route, maybe diving into clinical psychology or clinical therapy and learning about yourself. I think no matter what you choose, the most important thing is that your aim is to find your essence, to find who you are at the heart. Because once you find yourself at the heart, it might be a very arduous and long journey to get there, but once you get there, you'll never be lost again.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's so interesting, and your book and everything about you. And I just love that you are in a place that you feel joy, and that you're in a place that feels like home in Thailand.
Thank
And
you.
I want that for everyone else too. So thank you, Natalie, so much.
And likewise, Reverend Carol, thank you for being such a beautiful beacon of light for all of the people who you've gathered around you in this beautiful community. Because we need more people to shine this gorgeous light and to remind us of our true essence and help us rediscover that beautiful truth, the one truth.
That's what it's all about.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So thank you everyone, for joining us, and I now close the Spiritual Forum.